everyone, and welcome to Another Bite, where we rewatch the most innovative and intriguing pitches from Shark Tank. I'm Jorie, and I'm joined by Ariel.
Hey, everyone.
And Jon.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hold on to your cushy. This product is designed to save your tushy and just about everything else down there. That's right. Today's product aims to solve the pelvic pain that comes from sitting too long in the bike riding lane. Will the Sharks want to take this one for a spin, or will they put a brake on this product? You know what time it is. Ad time. Finding a service solution that helps you better connect with customers and keep them happy can feel impossible. Like trying to remember the name of that guy you met at a networking event. Was it Ron, or could it be Don or John? Maybe Sean? Yeah, that kind of impossible. HubSpot's all-new Service Hub can help. Well, in the service solution part, at least. It brings service and success together in one powerful platform for the first time ever. With an AI-powered help desk and an AI chatbot that handles frontline tickets fast. Plus, it comes with a customer success workspace that helps reps anticipate customer needs and a full 360 view of every customer, so your go-to-market team can keep a pulse on accounts trying to upsell or cross-sell. Also, you can scale support and drive revenue and retention. And you know what that means: better service and happier customers at every stage of their journey. Visit HubSpot.com/service so you can do more with your customers today. Today in the tank, we have VSeat, and VSeat is brought to us by founders Brian and Arie, and they are asking for $150,000 for 5% in their business, which is a $3 million valuation. The problem that they're trying to solve is, I don't know if you know this, but bicycle seats, they're very uncomfortable and they hurt your groin area. So these founders' solution is to create a better, more comfortable bike seat. So it's basically like a lightweight design. I don't know how you would describe the shape. Jon, any ideas here? I feel like you're a biker.
I described the shape as a triangle.
Yeah, it's a padded triangle.
Well, like most bike seats are shaped like a pear.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is more like a slice of pizza.
Okay, I see where you're
like
going with this.
Short slice of pizza, you know.
But essentially just like a new and kind of ergonomic designed bicycle seat. So thinking about our pitch, our founders, and our product today, initial thoughts of VSeat.
Is this a problem? I was actually sitting on my bike while I was watching this, and all of a sudden I became painfully aware of just how painful the seat was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bike seats are actually really painful.
But I never thought about it before until now.
Yeah, it's actually a big problem.
Yeah. I feel like the challenge with this product is, how do you emphasize this point to folks that may not bike as often, that may be more of like a casual kind of biker? How much of this is a universal problem? And like, how do you really explain the benefit of something that you have to kind of feel to experience?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we view a lot of products where it's like, you have to taste it to try it. But for the first time to actually like experience something and like kind of upsell that without actually sampling it first, I feel like has its own challenges.
Yeah, I think the problem is real.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the Sharks' reactions, actually sampling it on the show, it seems as though the VSeat is incredibly comfortable. Like Mr. Wonderful and Barbara were both like, wow, this is like amazing. This feels so good.
And Kevin's a bicycler.
Is he really? I mean, he said that, but he says he's in everything.
He got the spoke moving.
Benefit of the doubt, he's a
Have
cyclist.
you seen him cycling? I've never seen him cycling.
But I mean, we can take it at face value. Like maybe
Yeah,
he's
okay.
been on a bike recently.
Yeah. I don't know. Something about that interaction. I was like, oh, Mr. Wonderful, I'm tired of you saying you do your everything.
Jon's just being salty towards Mr.
I feel
Wonderful.
like, but Mr. Wonderful though actually did a few rotations on the wheel, whereas Barbara just took off her shoes and like didn't really pedal, which was like my pet peeve that irked me during the demonstration.
I don't know. Barbara was like, I'm going to get on. I was like, oh, if it's by Barbara's standards, I too am a cyclist. Like I can do that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've established there's a real problem, and we've established that this seems like a good solution. The question is just, how do you get lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people to buy it? It sells for $120 and it costs like $25 to make or something like that. And so it's got a decent margin on it, but I think it's going to be kind of expensive to market and sell, because I don't think a ton of people like buy a bike and then are like, I need to replace the seat right away. And so I think this is really their problem. It's not a high, like average selling price ASP product to begin with. So even though it has a good margin, it's not that expensive. And so in order to make any real money on it, you have to sell a crap ton of bicycle seats. I feel like selling a lot of bicycle seats is actually going to be a pretty tough challenge.
So something that we talk about a lot is that there's this difference between being a vitamin and a painkiller. And this feels like very much firmly like in that painkiller category, it's trying to alleviate like literal pain. So how do you properly market if your product is entirely a painkiller, right? Because couldn't they just focus on creating strategic partnerships, like getting into that point of sale? If we know that this is something that a lot of bicyclists have felt before, like what is the best way to get in front of their audience?
So I think there's a few different ways that come to mind initially. They could either go down the route, and the sharks kind of get into this too, of licensing or working with like other partnerships like a Peloton. So like if they have a certain bike model that comes out, then you ensure that you get distribution. You kind of sacrifice brand awareness at that point because not a lot of people will be like, oh, this seat specifically came from this manufacturer. But it's a great way to ensure that you would have like a little bit more consistencies in sales, that you're making sure that you're getting your product in households and like really getting that penetration there. But I think if they wanted to focus more on this is a vitamin, we're really pushing the VSeat as like its own standalone brand. The first step is bringing universal awareness to the problem. And I feel like with cycling, I feel like a lot of them is so much driven by community. Like, hey, I utilize these cycling shoes. They're like my favorite. So like there's a lot of recommendations and power of word of mouth. I think that they could really tap into. It just really matters if they really want to make VSeat the standalone SKU as their business versus like licensing it, leveraging that technology to like other existing businesses and incorporating it with products that they already have.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it's about raising awareness of the problem. It's raising awareness of the solution. I think people know it's kind of a problem. I think there's a willingness to pay problem here. The real worry that I have is like, sure, when you ride your bicycle, sometimes your rear hurts. Are most people willing to pay like $125 to like relieve that pain? I don't know. I ride my bike a lot. I used to ride it a ton. And never once in my life was I like, wow, I should get a new seat because this seat is uncomfortable, even though the seat was actually really uncomfortable. So I just think it's actually going to be like a very hard thing to get someone to spend money on.
So do you think it's a matter of the price, or it's kind of just like a problem we all kind of accepted and just kind of like dealt with?
I think it's a kind of a problem we've all accepted. And so this is where it's like, yeah, I guess, Ariel, maybe you just like, it's about raising awareness about the solution. And there's a quick way to test that out. And I think they kind of said this is what they did is they started doing some Facebook advertising, right? And that helped them kind of pop off some sales. And I think that is a really easy way to figure out whether the people are willing to pay to solve the problem and how much they're willing to pay. And I would probably, if I were them, play around with that a lot and price it at different price points to figure out what the price elasticity curve is of, solving this problem and figure out maybe they should sell it for $75 at a lower margin because they will sell twice as many. And so there's some curve they should play with. And I would do a lot of experimenting if I were them right now, because I do think the only way to really go to market here is to sell directly to consumers.
Not go the B2B route.
Yeah, they flirted on the show with doing what's called like an OEM agreement, which is where basically someone manufactures a part of a system on behalf of a manufacturer. So for a bike like Cannondale, like it's very unlikely that Cannondale themselves manufacture every part that goes into the Cannondale bike. They assemble the bike and set the specifications for what is going to be built by other manufacturers. But my guess is that there is an OEM provider to Cannondale for all of their seats, and they basically outsource their seats to some company. And so Sharks kind of flirted with like, oh, that's the way to go here. That's how you get a bunch of scale on it. But I don't think there's actually willingness to pay from Cannondale to put this on every bike seat. I think Cannondale only cares about the lowest cost stuff on there, especially for something like a seat, which isn't like a decision-making criteria probably.
That's interesting because I struggle because it's a single SKU brand, right? Like they don't have any other products within their suite. I think, the struggle of like, okay, we position as it's a vitamin, or maybe you position that you can last on your bike longer by like 20%. There's a lot of data points that they could probably use to buffer in like what that value is. But I don't know. I feel like going that OEM route could really be beneficial for them because they are just focused on that one seat. Or is that a very like simplistic way of thinking about it?
I kind of have a hot take though, because I think that the issue here too is that there's a conflation of two very different personas, right? Because I do think the buying behavior of outdoor bicyclists is different than indoor spinners. When you do spin, it's really hard to ignore how uncomfortable a seat is. And when you own your own bike, the fact that it was $120 kind of actually made sense to me. And I have paid more for my at-home spin bike because I don't have a Peloton. But I feel like there is a bit more of a culture in spinners to get the ergonomic shoes, to get the handlebars with the correct grip and the correct way to hold your iPad. Like, I do think that Peloton kind of changed the games in terms of the at-home bike, but I do feel like there is a subset of the market that is into deep customization, because that's a type of exercise that you want to do every day, or as much as your body can like naturally handle. So I almost wonder too, it is a single SKU, but I do think that they're trying to sell to potentially two different use cases. They even conflated that in their pitch, right? So one of the founders had walked out with like a physical bike, but then the sharks were trying it on a static bicycle. And it makes sense because we both think of those types of devices as both bikes, but I actually think that they're two different markets.
Mm-hmm.
Let's decide it is two personas, the indoor spinner and the outdoor cyclist. The question is, do they have different things that they care about? And do they have different willingness to pays and things like that? And one thing that's really interesting for them to think about is like, at what point do they market to those two personas very differently?
Yeah.
Right? They could have the exact same product, but they could just market it on different reasons to believe. And they could have different looking landing pages for it. And they could pitch it as two things. They could sell it at a different price.
Yeah.
Like they could do a whole bunch of things very differently. And one risk that comes from having a product that serves multiple personas is that you generalize it so much that it doesn't really appeal to any of the personas. And so they could at the moment be creating some confusion amongst their buyers of like, I do like 100 miles every day on the weekend. Is this
like,
for
who
me?
is this for?
Do I qualify for this?
Yeah, exactly.
Do I need a fuchsia seat?
That's right. I mean, definitely.
I mean, the answer is yes, always yes.
Yes, obviously.
And I think that would change how it thinks about entirely like its social strategy,
100%,
right?
yeah.
I think if you look on their socials, right, like there's just like this conflation of like, it's indoors, it's outdoors. And it's not the type of product that I could envision that if you were both a cyclist and someone that does spin, you would like take the seat off and transfer it. So you'd want two of them. But yeah, I think just like a little bit more clarity of what is the ideal use case, and everything else is secondary.
Yep.
But Jon, Kevin the cyclist did try it out. Barbara said it was terrific. And I think actually trying out the product was what got that first offer on the table.
Yeah.
But a huge part of this product that we haven't really addressed is this origin story. So Arie had mentioned that this was the American dream come true, that she was an immigrant. She built this company from nothing. And even when she was in her career, she just wanted to create something that would help people, which kind of leads us to this bike seat. And it was Rob, who sometimes is kind of the quiet one, but he's like, that resonated with me.
Yeah, he has a very similar story.
Even though he didn't hop on the bike, he like hopped into the Shark Tank.
Well, to quote Hamilton, immigrants, they get the job done.
It's true.
I heard her story and I was like super impressed. Clearly hyper intelligent, hyper hardworking, hyper entrepreneurial, and like has literally all the right skills to make this something big. And it's just kind of one of those cases where it's like, half of making an investment in an entrepreneur is the product, but half is actually the entrepreneur themselves.
Yeah.
She like checks all the boxes related to like, is she investable? That was just like very, very clear. And so, if you were looking at the VSeat and you were like, okay, I think it's a problem. I think they've got an interesting solution. It's going to be a hard road to monetize it and to sell a lot of them, but maybe there's a path. And then like you looked at her on top of it, I think you would do the deal. Because I think you'd be like, you know what? If anyone's going to find a way, it's going to be her.
Definitely.
Like she's going to find a way. And she's personally all in on it. She put $500,000 into it with her partner. So a lot of reasons to be bullish on her.
But I think too, even her background, which I love, her background is in like medical devices. So you know that there's like many years of research and like the quality is still there. And I think the fact that, the entrepreneur has such a strong background there as the business continues to grow, I feel like as an investor, be reassuring that like, okay, we're not going to make sacrifices to cuts of like the actual like value add of the product.
That's right.
It's always reaffirming.
Definitely. So ultimately, though, we saw a Shark Tank team up that we don't often get because we had Kevin the cyclist, very interested. We had Rob, the entrepreneur lover, and they came in on a deal.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of back and forth, some trying to make sure that everyone was happy with the deal. But ultimately, Kevin suggested that both him and Rob go in for $200,000 for 25% of the business, and everyone agreed to it. So VSeat was successful and walked away with a Shark Tank deal.
Wonder what they used the capital for.
total extrapolation, but this also feels like a mentorship potential vibe. I think you're spot on, Jon. I think they're investing in the entrepreneur in the long run here.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, if you're an entrepreneur in the situation that they were in, they've actually got a pretty good product for a real problem, but one that is actually hard to convince people to pay money for, and that you have to convince tons of those people to pay money to actually make a lot of money as a company. Getting teamed up with experts with built-in distribution is like a dream come true.
Huge.
So I think what the Sharks will be able to do to open doors and to actually drive volume for them will be incredible.
Definitely. And I mean, they're doing good with margins, so you'll love to see it. Production for today's episode was brought to you by Arie Desormeaux. Editing comes from Robert Hartwig and support from Alfred Schulz. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you subscribe to the greatest podcasts ever. That does it for me. See you next week in the tank for another bite. Create Like the Greats, hosted by Ross Simmons, is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. Each episode hosts an in-depth analysis of some of the greatest creations and creators of all time, along with deep dive conversations on the creative process that went into building companies and brands. If you like learning about history or learning about the creative process, you'll like this podcast. Listen to Create Like the Greats wherever you get your podcasts.